Hello and welcome to Analog Insights. In today's episode, Greg and I take a closer look at two particular Pentax Espio compact cameras with zoom lenses. The first one is the Pentax 928 with a 28mm to 90mm focal length that was released in 1994, and the second one is the more impressive, the Pentax 120SW with a focal length range from 28mm all the way up to 120mm, and that was released in 2001, so basically when digital photography already took off, and here we still see the release of a film camera, and a compact one at that. And what is interesting about these compact zoom film cameras is that they are often overlooked, in my opinion. We have a lot of people being very interested in compact cameras with fixed focal lengths, especially people starting out shooting film or more established seasoned film photographers looking for another casual camera that is easy to pocket and still shoots full frame 35mm and so on. And many people end up looking at cameras in the 28mm or 35mm focal length range, especially 28mm in my perception is very popular, and cameras like the Minolta TC-1 or Ricoh GR1 or the Nikon 28 Ti have become heavily sought after, and as a result of that very, very pricey to obtain. And an interesting alternative are these lesser known and often overlooked compact zoom lens cameras that also come with the 28mm focal length, and at least in one case here, a maximum aperture of f3.5, which is perfectly fine and decent in comparison to the typical maximum aperture of 2.8 for the fixed focal length ones. And these cameras here, and this is the big difference, are in terms of price ranging between 30 to 100 euros. So a completely different story to the hundreds of euros that you typically pay for the fixed focal length compact cameras with autofocus and so on. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to take a look at these, and we took them out for a photo walk in and around Würzburg, and shooting some Kodak Gold 200 at box speed. And of course, as always, these films were developed and scanned by my trusted On Film Lab in Frankfurt. So let's take a closer look at these two cameras. Let's start with the newer camera that immediately caught my attention, the Pentax Espio 120SW. It comes with a beautiful aluminum body, a really sleek and reduced design. And only the back door here is made of silver painted plastic. The camera only weighs 190 grams and comes with the aforementioned 28mm to 120mm zoom lens. And the only downside here of the compact form factor is that the maximum aperture range is relatively limited. So at 28mm you would only have f5.6, and on the other end of the spectrum at 120mm it goes down to even 12.8, which means that you need a lot of light available to expose that correctly, or of course you have a built-in flash that then comes in. The camera supports the X-coated film between ISO 25 to 3200, and the electronic shutter supports speeds between 1/360th of a second and 2 seconds, as well as a bulb mode with times between half a second and up to 2 minutes. The camera has a built-in flash as mentioned, and you can select between 7 different exposure modes. The autofocus also works really, really well and supports distances between 0.5 meters and infinity. You can also choose between a 5-spot autofocus, a spot autofocus on a selected point, and infinity mode, which basically turns the autofocus off and is great for shooting landscapes, for instance. Next to all these controls is a switch that lets you turn the camera on and off, or select the self-timer, which may also be used with an additionally available remote control. The LCD panel shows all the relevant information and automatically lights up in darkest situations, which of course is convenient. And you can zoom with your thumb with the intuitive control element here on the back, and next to the viewfinder is also a diopter slider that lets you correct it to your eyesight. The bottom plate features a tripod socket, a mid-roll rewind button, and a switch to change to a panorama mode, which effectively crops the bottom and the top of your frame. So it's not really a panorama, just the result looks a little bit more panoramic. And the battery compartment can also be accessed via the bottom here, and the camera takes a CR2 battery, which lasts for roughly 8 rows of 36 frames. We have to bear in mind again that this camera was marketed at the same time as digital cameras, so it can be considered one of the last compact zoom cameras. And you can already tell by the look and feel of the camera, it was really promoted as a premium camera back then and marketed as such in its heyday. And looking at today's price, between 70 to 120 euro, this is really, really interesting and quite a bargain from my perspective. The Pentax Espio 928 is a completely different story. It looks significantly more like the 1990s, it weighs 315 grams and is certainly larger. And yet it comes with a remarkable 28mm to 90mm zoom lens with 9 elements in 7 groups and a very similar minimum focusing distance of 0.58 meters. It also has an interesting maximum aperture range of f3.5 at 28mm and only f9 at 90mm. So arguably this is a perfect camera if you prefer doing a lot of autofocus wide angle shots, the quick ones with the compact zoom camera. Then this one here is certainly great for that, and you can still throw in the occasional telephoto shot or portrait, and it's perfectly capable of doing that as well. The electronic shutter selects speeds between 1/400th of a second and 1/5th of a second, and it supports DX coding film and automatically selects the right ISO between 25 and 3200 as well. And in case you're using non-DX coded film, it would revert to 25 in terms of the settings. This camera only costs 30 euros, which is really incredible because what you get is a great lens, fast and reliable autofocus, and a quite intuitive control, and a not too noisy operation. So it's a little bit louder arguably than the Pentax Espio 120SW, and yet it's perfectly fine. The controls and operation are also very similar. On the top you have an LCD surrounded by different function buttons such as flash, red eye, infinity focus, and the self-timer, plus of course the shutter release button. And on the back you have a button to turn the camera on, surrounded by a dial to switch between different modes. This camera here also already comes with a panorama mode, which does the same, it just crops the frame. And next to the viewfinder is a diopter correction, and on the right side a prominent zoom button, of course. The camera also comes with automatic film advance and a mid-roll rewind if needed, and it takes CR123A batteries, and as mentioned is slightly noisier than the other camera. Other than that, it's a really remarkable piece of gear that I would say, because of its slightly larger size and 1990s vibes, is often overlooked, and its price of €30 is just incredible. The results look great for both cameras, and it was very hard to discern differences between the two different lenses. Both of them produce images that are sharp across the entire frame. There's no fall off or vignetting, basically what you would also expect for such maximum apertures. They simply look fantastic, well corrected, hardly any distortion. So just very nice solid images. The color reproduction is great, and overall just really good results. We had occasional trouble with the autofocus, but that was mostly on us, I would say, if we were getting too close to a subject and didn't really wait for the autofocus to provide that feedback and took the shot anyways. Or in one case, I tried to take a shot through a window and didn't think of, okay, the autofocus might not work here correctly because of the window. And I also didn't wait for the confirmation to see that and just took the shot anyways. And that was, not wise, so to speak. And as a result, the image is out of focus. But other than that, if we were not the problem, it just worked perfectly fine. Both cameras obviously often automatically brought in the flash in situations where the exposure would have been too dark because of the zoom stage or the available light, and we were both curious to see how that would affect the images. And in some cases it worked more like a fill flash that kind of lightened up a certain area of the frame and that actually looked great, and sometimes it was really like that perfect in-your-face frontal flash. And that reminded me a lot of what I typically do with my Yashica T3D, which is editorial fashion shoots. And I can really see myself using such a Pentax Espio also for that use case. And with the added benefit of having a zoom stage that I can throw in if I want to, and not just be limited to one focal length as in the case of the Yashica T3D. Overall, I believe these cameras are often overlooked despite the optical quality that they deliver. Both are ideal compact travel and everyday carry cameras that give you reliably good images. The Pentax 120SW arguably is even smaller and more compact and lighter, and yet both are fantastic from an optical standpoint, and as long as your film is DX coded, you will get great results with these cameras. So what about the handling and our personal impressions? Greg has been using these cameras for ages and basically photographed his kids growing up, and he said for him it's very hard to choose between the two. They both have a place in his life and a reason to be, basically. As mentioned before, I was immediately drawn to the 120SW because of its design, kind of this late 1990s, early 2000s design. And I wouldn't describe it as timeless, but something that is unique and specific for that time period and resembles a little bit, or reminded me a little bit, of certain cars from that period that still have their place today and are suddenly sought after because of their design and of what they sometimes remind people of. They make them nostalgic and so on. And at least to me, I have a similar feeling about this particular camera and the premium feel that it kind of radiates. In terms of handling, both cameras are incredibly intuitive and were a joy to use. And we were both actually surprised how much we enjoyed shooting them on that particular morning in Würzburg. And we not only burned through film, but we also felt like they really support a casual photographer as much as somebody who wants to take more serious images. And as a result of that, they both work either as a great second camera to bring on a trip, for instance, and then if you look at the light and you feel like, oh, I just want to have something that is very pocketable, you only take that camera out. Versus if you do more serious photography, you take both out, for instance. But it also, both of them would work as just the one camera that you have, as long as you know or are aware of the limitations and don't mind or even play with them. So there are maybe cases where you don't want to have flash, and then you're kind of bound to using flash because of the maximum aperture and how it is a little bit limiting. These are the only downsides that I can think of, and you might not want to have that look in your image. It's not what you're after, and still you have it in there. This is what can happen, but if you're aware of that, if you know how to play it, then perfectly fine. For my money, I'm a little bit more drawn to the 120SW, mostly because of the design. If it's important to you to have a better maximum aperture, so to speak, then I would recommend the 928, because as mentioned before here, for 30 euros, you get an incredible autofocus, easy to use camera that is really, really a joy to use. And that also can, if you want, zoom a little bit, and all you lose is a little bit of a stop here in terms of the 28mm widest aperture, and that's it. So not really a limitation in comparison to spending quite a fortune on a Minolta TC-1 and so on. That of course looks better and so on, but it really comes down to what is important to you. And if it's the results and the joy of creating these results, then both cameras are really, really nice and often overlooked. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this more playful comparison of two Pentax compact zoom cameras that are relatively inexpensive and still produce fantastic results and represent a category that Pentax had put on the map in the first place in 1986. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it and maybe share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Jules, Greg, and I really appreciate every subscriber coming our way. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.